Imagine walking into a room and instantly feeling like nobody belongs there but you. Everyone talks, laughs, connects, yet you're standing outside it all. Have you ever noticed that the people who think the most, the ones who see through the small talk and the surface-level chatter, often end up standing alone? It's not a coincidence. The smarter you are, the more your mind operates on a different wavelength than most people around you. While others are satisfied with easy conversations and shallow connections, you're dissecting motives, patterns, and hidden agendas. You notice contradictions, hypocrisies, and subtle manipulations that fly right over other people's heads. It's exhausting, and it's isolating, because the moment you point them out, or even react to them internally, you suddenly feel separate from the crowd. Everyone else seems content to follow the flow, to accept what's in front of them without question, and there's no shame in that. But for you, it's almost unbearable to stay quiet. Your intelligence gives you a lens into the world that's sharper, clearer, and heavier than most can handle, and carrying that lens feels like a constant weight. The isolation isn't just about intellect, it's about perception. You understand things about human nature that others either ignore or can't see. You notice who's sincere, who's pretending, and who's hiding behind false confidence. You see patterns in behavior, cycles of manipulation, and the invisible rules of influence that govern social hierarchies. And while this awareness should be an advantage, it comes with a cost. Relationships feel more transactional, interactions feel shallow, and friendships are difficult to maintain because few people are willing or able to meet you at the same mental and emotional level. You start to crave depth, honesty, and understanding, but those things are rare, and the ones who offer them often misunderstand your intentions. You can't turn your brain off, and so every conversation leaves you slightly alienated. Then there's the frustration that comes from being misunderstood. You might try to explain a thought or an observation, and the reaction you get is blank stares, polite nods, or worse, ridicule. People might even label you as overthinking, intense, or socially awkward. None of it feels fair because you're not trying to impress or judge. You're simply perceiving the world in a more nuanced way. And yet, their reaction forces you to retreat, to stop sharing, to internalize even more. Each time that happens, the gap between you and the average person widens. That gap isn't just social, it becomes emotional too. You feel emotions more deeply, empathize more intensely, and your highs and lows are amplified by your awareness of the world. Simple interactions that others breeze through effortlessly can feel draining and alienating for you. At the same time, being highly intelligent creates a kind of invisible expectation. You hold yourself to higher standards, and you expect the same from the people around you. You notice when people act out of laziness, fear, or superficiality, and it irritates you, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. You're conscious of wasted potential and squandered opportunities, and you can't help but see the inefficiency in systems, conversations, and even in relationships. Most people never reflect on these things, and they certainly don't like being reminded of them. So, the smarter you get, the more you're left observing from the sidelines. And yet, this loneliness isn't necessarily a curse. It's a signal. It's proof that you're operating at a higher plane than most. Your intelligence separates you because your mind demands more, and that separation is a form of power waiting to be mastered. It's the price of clarity, of insight, of understanding the world the way it truly is. While others chase fleeting distractions, you carry a kind of mental edge, an awareness that few can comprehend. That edge can feel isolating, but it also means you're capable of things others aren't even aware exist. In this solitude, in this perceived loneliness, there lies a hidden advantage, the ability to observe, analyze, and act with precision, without being weighed down by the ignorance or chaos that surrounds most people. Have you ever tried to tell someone what you really see, only to watch them shut down or look at you like you're from another planet? That's because most people don't want truth. They want comfort. They want the stories they tell themselves to feel right, the life they've built to seem secure, and the illusions that make their world predictable. Your mind doesn't work like that. You see through the fog. You notice the cracks, the inconsistencies, the hidden motives. What you understand about people, society, and power, it's heavy. It weighs on you in a way that most people will never experience because they don't care to see what you see. They'd rather laugh it off, ignore it, or pretend it doesn't exist. And when you confront it, it makes them uncomfortable. That discomfort often turns into distance. You're not being dramatic, judgmental, or negative. You're just awake. And being awake is lonely because it forces you to live in a world that most people will never inhabit. The strange part is that this heaviness isn't something you choose. It's part of how your mind works. You notice patterns in behavior, subtle signs of manipulation, hidden fears, and unspoken agendas. You pick up on energy, tension, and contradiction that everyone else overlooks. You understand why someone says one thing but does another, why the world rewards mediocrity over merit, and why the clever often go unnoticed. You carry this understanding silently because speaking it aloud too soon usually pushes people away. They're not ready to hear it, and they instinctively distance themselves from anything that challenges their comfort zone. That's why your truth always feels heavier than theirs. It exists in a space they haven't explored, a dimension of awareness they actively avoid. And here's the cruel irony. The smarter and more perceptive you become, the more alienated you feel, because you can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unhear the lies, the excuses, and the shallow promises. You can't stop noticing how people act for appearances rather than substance. It's like being in a crowded room, surrounded by noise, while the rest of the people are asleep, and you're the only one awake. They laugh, joke, and carry on, and you can't join in fully, not because you don't want to, but because it feels fake. You crave depth, honesty, and meaning in every interaction, but most people can't or won't give it. That gap grows wider every time you try to share a truth, and it's rejected, ignored, or misunderstood. What makes it even more isolating is the subtle way people push back. They don't always confront you openly. Often, it's a glance, a sigh, a slight withdrawal, or a dismissive comment. They sense the weight of your insight, and instead of trying to engage, they avoid it. And when they do engage, it's defensive, guarded, or sarcastic. You start to learn quickly that revealing your full perspective comes with consequences. That makes you cautious, introspective, and even more silent, which deepens the solitude. But in that silence lies a hidden advantage, the ability to see clearly without interference. You're no longer caught in the illusions that comfort others. You can analyze, strategize, and understand the world without being distracted by denial or pretense. Over time, this creates a paradox. The very intelligence and clarity that make you isolated also make you powerful. While others chase comfort, you chase truth. While they settle for what's easy, you are awake to what's real. And that awareness, though heavy, equips you to move differently, think differently, and act with precision. You see opportunities, weaknesses, and patterns that others can't. You understand the subtle currents of influence, the hidden rules of human behavior, and the silent strategies that drive success and failure alike. Your truth isn't just knowledge, it's a tool, a weapon, and a shield. And while it separates you from the crowd, it also positions you far ahead of them. Think about the people around you. You try to connect, to share something meaningful, and yet it often feels like you're speaking a different language. Conversations that should be easy feel frustrating. Jokes that land for everyone else barely register for you. You notice inconsistencies in their words and actions that everyone else ignores, and it slowly creates a sense of distance. It's not that you don't want friends or relationships. It's that the ones who can truly understand your mind and your perspective are rare, almost non-existent. You start to realize that most people are content with surface-level interactions, small talk, and shallow connections. They measure friendship with convenience, loyalty with presence, and trust with words, not actions. For you, those things are meaningless unless they're backed by insight, depth, and authenticity. That mismatch makes it hard to form lasting bonds because the people around you are either unwilling or unable to meet you where you are. The gap isn't just about intellect, it's about emotional complexity too. You feel emotions more deeply, and you notice nuances in others' feelings that most people overlook. A subtle shift in tone, a fleeting look in someone's eyes, a hesitation in speech. It all communicates volumes to you. You intuitively pick up on insecurities, fears, and hidden agendas. But when you try to address these things, or even act on them quietly, people pull away. They sense the intensity, and instead of appreciating it, they feel exposed or uncomfortable. That makes friendship a tightrope walk. You can't just lower your standards, because that's not who you are. But insisting on authenticity narrows your options, leaving you with fewer companions and more solitude. Over time, you notice patterns. People admire your intelligence, but avoid your depth. They respect your insights in certain moments, but can't handle the consistency of your awareness. Many will only engage on topics that are light, easy, or entertaining, never diving into the difficult truths you see daily. You realize that to maintain relationships, you often have to tone down your perception, hold back thoughts, or censor your honesty. That's a strange kind of loneliness. It's being surrounded by people, but unable to truly be yourself. You can't share your full vision, your full understanding, or your full feelings without creating friction or distance. It's exhausting and isolating, and it creates a recurring internal question. Is anyone truly on my level, or am I destined to navigate life largely alone? Yet there's a subtle advantage hidden in this challenge. Because your connections are scarce, the ones who do make it through your filters are rare, genuine, and invaluable. Your mind learns to recognize authenticity instantly, and you invest only in people who truly match your level of thought, integrity, and insight. You no longer waste time on superficial connections or false loyalty. Each relationship you cultivate becomes strategic, deliberate, and meaningful. That awareness also teaches you independence. You begin to rely less on external validation and more on your own judgment, your own understanding, and your own growth. The loneliness transforms into self-mastery. You learn that solitude isn't a weakness, it's a training ground. It forces you to sharpen your mind, refine your character, and define your values without compromise. This struggle also teaches you empathy at a higher level. Because you've experienced being misunderstood and isolated, you recognize it in others. You become someone who can quietly read a room, sense unspoken tension, and understand motives without needing everything spelled out. That skill, rare, subtle, and powerful, is a direct result of the very loneliness that others fear. People might see your solitude as a curse, but for you, it's a kind of education. Every shallow interaction, every friendship that fails to meet your expectations, every moment of being misunderstood shapes your ability to navigate the world with precision, insight, and control. You start to understand the value of patience, observation, and timing in relationships. You realize that meaningful connections are not measured by quantity, but by depth, and that the world rewards those who can walk alone with confidence and purpose. Over time, you start to notice a pattern in your relationships. You want depth, meaning, and understanding, but most people don't operate on that level. They're satisfied with small talk, casual banter, and easy laughs, while you're analyzing motives, observing patterns, and thinking 3 steps ahead. That difference creates a silent gap, a space where few can reach you. It's not that you don't want friends or connections. It's that the connections that truly satisfy your mind are extremely rare. Most people simply can't handle the intensity of your thoughts, the clarity of your perceptions, or the weight of your awareness. They admire your intelligence in certain moments, they respect it superficially, but they can't consistently engage with the full depth of your mind. And that leaves you feeling isolated, even when surrounded by others. It's not just intellectual isolation, it's emotional too. You notice subtle shifts in people, the hesitation in their voice, the fleeting discomfort in their eyes, the unspoken tension in their gestures, and it communicates volumes to you. You pick up on weaknesses, fears, and hidden intentions almost instinctively. But when you act on these insights, or even respond internally, most people recoil, consciously or unconsciously. That makes it hard to form relationships, because the very traits that make you aware and insightful also make others uncomfortable. They can't follow you there, and they often avoid you without realizing why. You're left navigating a world full of people who are awake, only enough to exist, but asleep to the nuances of reality that dominate your thoughts. Because of this, you start to self-filter. You hold back your observations, your truths, and your deeper thoughts, knowing that speaking them might push people away. You begin to measure what is safe to say and what must remain inside. Each time you censor yourself, the gap between you and the average person grows. Interactions that could have been genuine become transactional or superficial, and you learn quickly that exposing your full intelligence and awareness comes with social risk. People who might have been allies or friends instead retreat, intimidated or confused by your insight. That's a kind of loneliness that isn't obvious. It's subtle, quiet, and pervasive. You can be in a room full of people and still feel entirely alone because the people around you cannot match the depth of your perception or the clarity of your thinking. Yet, there's a hidden strength in this challenge. Because most people operate at a shallow level, you become selective about the relationships you invest in. You develop an instinct for authenticity. The friendships and connections that survive your scrutiny are far more meaningful than the average connection. Each person who meets you at your mental and emotional level becomes a rare asset, someone who can truly engage with your mind without draining it. And in that selectivity, you cultivate independence. You rely less on validation from the crowd because you understand that the majority cannot give you what you need. You learn to navigate the world alone without losing your edge, your vision, or your power. This isolation also becomes a training ground. It forces you to develop patience, observation, and strategic thinking in relationships. You learn to discern motives, read social cues, and act with precision. The solitude that once felt like a burden becomes an advantage, giving you the mental clarity and emotional resilience that others lack. You understand that meaningful relationships are not measured by quantity, but by depth, and that few people are equipped to engage with your level of insight. While others chase numbers, popularity, or superficial bonds, you operate on a higher plane, building a network of depth, strategy, and trust. Each shallow or failed connection reinforces your awareness, teaching you that your loneliness is not a flaw, but a necessary part of your growth and a path to mastery over your own mind and your interactions with the world. Here's the part that shocks most people. The moment you start trying to be noticed, the moment you try to force attention, recognition, or approval, you become invisible. It sounds insane, but think about it. All your life, you've been conditioned to believe that standing out means speaking louder, showing off, or proving yourself. You've tried it, maybe subtly at first, maybe boldly, and yet no matter what you do, it often backfires. People don't respond the way you expect. Sometimes they dismiss you, sometimes they envy you silently, and sometimes they actively resist what you're offering. That's because the world doesn't reward effort or intelligence in the way you think. It rewards timing, perception, and subtle mastery. And here's the kicker. The moment you chase attention, you enter a space where people project their insecurities onto you, where they unconsciously push back, and suddenly, your efforts make you less visible rather than more. You see, most people operate on a reactive level. They notice loudness, extravagance, and performance. They are trained to respond to appearances rather than substance. When you try to push yourself into that arena, you are competing in a game you weren't meant to play. Your intelligence, your awareness, your clarity, they aren't tools for performance. They are tools for observation, strategy, and quiet influence. The harder you try to fit into the world's idea of being seen, the more you violate your natural rhythm, and the more you draw resistance. It's a paradox. The moment you chase visibility, you make yourself less capable of being understood. People stop seeing the real you and start seeing the version of you you're projecting, and that projection rarely carries the weight, insight, or authenticity you possess. This is where the lesson of Machiavelli becomes critical. He understood human behavior in its rawest form, and he taught that power doesn't come from forcing others to notice you. It comes from mastering yourself, from moving silently while everyone else acts loudly. The truly powerful are often invisible because they don't seek validation. They observe, they analyze, they act at the precise moment when their presence matters most. Trying to force recognition before you've mastered your own state not only wastes energy, but guarantees frustration. You become a performer on someone else's stage instead of a strategist in your own world. And every failed attempt at forced attention reinforces the isolation you've already felt, making you question whether anyone truly sees you at all. What most people don't realize is that invisibility isn't weakness. It's a signal. It's the world telling you that you're operating differently, that your mind and your approach aren't aligned with the average path. This is uncomfortable because humans crave immediate validation, but the discomfort is exactly what separates the intelligent from the ordinary. While others are distracted chasing applause, you're learning the subtle currents of influence, the unspoken rules of respect, and the patterns that determine who succeeds and who fails. Invisibility forces patience, strategic thinking, and emotional discipline. It teaches you to act without expectation, to maintain power quietly, and to develop presence that doesn't need to be announced to be felt. And here's the shocking truth. Once you stop trying to be seen, you start to be noticed. The moment you abandon the chase, embrace your solitude, and focus on mastering your own mind, people respond differently. Your presence becomes magnetic, not because you're louder or flashier, but because you've become deliberate, precise, and authentic. Your invisibility transforms into power. The same energy that once isolated you now elevates you above the crowd. The gap between you and others becomes your advantage, a space where you can act, influence, and dominate quietly while the rest struggle to keep up. It's a reversal that few understand, but it's the defining moment where loneliness stops being a burden and becomes a weapon, a silent edge that lets you see what others cannot. Act where others hesitate, and control your world in ways that are subtle but unstoppable now. This is where everything changes. This is the moment when you take all the isolation, all the heaviness, all the times you felt invisible, and you turn it into strength. You realize that your mind, the same mind that made you feel misunderstood, alone, and frustrated, is actually your greatest weapon. You've been training in silence, sharpening awareness, observing the world while others were distracted by noise, attention, or approval. That alone gives you an advantage most people will never have. The awareness that once felt like a burden is now the foundation of your power. You start seeing your loneliness not as a weakness, but as preparation, a place where you quietly built patience, insight, and self-control, qualities that others spend a lifetime trying to fake. Here's what most people miss: power is not about being the loudest or the flashiest. Power is quiet, it's precise, it's deliberate, and it's invisible until it's too late for others to stop it. You've already experienced the frustration of being unseen, of trying and failing to make people notice. That's actually your secret training ground. While everyone else was seeking validation, you were learning the rules of influence, understanding human behavior on a deeper level, and mastering the art of timing. Now, because you've done that work in silence, you can act where others are blind, respond where others hesitate, and command respect without ever demanding it. That's the real kind of power, the one that doesn't need to be announced because it's undeniable. And it goes deeper than just perception. Your isolation has taught you control over your own emotions. You've endured the frustration of being ignored, the sting of misunderstanding, and the weight of insight. Yet you've survived. You've learned to act without impulse, to speak only when necessary, and to conserve your energy for the moments that actually matter. That discipline is rare. Most people waste theirs reacting to every slight, chasing every attention, grabbing opportunity, and surrendering their power to external validation. You, on the other hand, have learned to hold your fire, to move strategically, and to protect your energy, and that creates an aura of strength that people feel instinctively, even if they can't explain why. The next layer of power comes from your ability to see others clearly. You notice patterns in behavior, subtle motives, and hidden dynamics that most people never perceive. That knowledge allows you to navigate relationships, influence decisions, and avoid traps before they even appear. It's like playing chess in a room where everyone else is playing checkers. You can anticipate moves, plan several steps ahead, and act with precision that seems almost unnatural to those who don't have your level of awareness. And the beauty of this is that it doesn't require ego, performance, or approval. It's all quiet, internal mastery, the kind that builds respect, authority, and influence organically. This is why solitude is not a punishment, it's a proving ground. The very loneliness that once hurt you has shaped your mind, sharpened your instincts, and refined your strategy. You've learned patience, observation, and timing. You've learned to act deliberately rather than react blindly. You've learned that your value doesn't come from being noticed by the crowd, but from cultivating the edge that the crowd cannot comprehend. And now, because you've endured what most people can't, you are ready to wield your power in a way that changes everything. You understand that influence doesn't come from force, it comes from mastery. It comes from clarity, patience, and the quiet confidence that your mind, your insight, and your perception are already ahead of everyone else. At this point, the world that once seemed indifferent, frustrating, or even hostile begins to shift. You no longer seek permission. You no longer chase recognition. You operate from a position of control that others only dream of. The loneliness that once felt heavy is now your weapon. The depth of your thinking, the precision of your observations, and the discipline you've cultivated make you invisible in the right moments and unstoppable when it counts. You've transformed isolation into strategy, invisibility into authority, and intelligence into power.